Hello and good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to Roots of Life Christian Counsel Ministries, LLC, where we seek to provide holistic healing for the broken in spirit, mind, and body through biblical counsel. The scripture foundation for this ministry is the Gospel of John, chapter 15, verse 5, which states in the words of Jesus, I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abides in me and I in you shall bear much fruit, for without me you can do nothing. Jesus is ultimately painting a picture or explaining the type of connection and relationship we ought to have with Him, and as a result, the fruitfulness that will result in our lives and staying and being connected to Him, for He is the source of life, the source of healing. My name is Minister Zanetta Baker. I am a licensed minister and a certified pastoral counselor, as well as a registered professional nurse. Today, we will be continuing the discussion that we've had on last week. With today is part three. Last week was part two. Recap of last week's discussion was on the roots of personal boundary problems. And this is relating personally to self and how it affects how we relate with other people when we are in relationship. So, to recap from last week's discussion, we begin to describe how personal boundary problems transforms into dysfunctional relationships. Last week, we listed three types of personal boundary problems an individual can have. One is a compliant. A compliant are individuals who are unable to say no to bad things or people who threaten their emotional and psychological well being. These individuals are driven by fear of various reasons. Some of those reasons could be hurting others' feelings. They have the inability to say no out of fear of hurting someone else's feelings. Out of fear of being abandoned if they say no, or being separated, or afraid of being alone. Another reason could be guilt ridden of one's own critical conscience. That's your own psychological perception of guilt, of being bad or feeling bad or being perceived as bad if you say no to things. Compliant is developed. A person who has a compliant personal boundary problem stems from childhood. It can be from parents teaching children that saying no is bad. Consequently, that teaches children that it is okay for them to be mistreated by others, and others can do whatever they want to them because they have not been taught, modeled to setting a boundary against things that jeopardizes their emotional and psychological well-being. So they carry this into adulthood, into relationships. They still carry this inability to say no. Now you find yourself in an abusive relationship. This is how abusive relationships or those involved, this is how it evolves the person. These individuals, again, are often involved in abusive types of relationships and oftentimes realizes too late that they're in a dangerous relationship. Compliance, in essence, are broken individuals whose spiritual and emotional radar is shattered. It's shattered into pieces, and they have no ability to guard their heart, thus becoming vulnerable to the deceitful intentions of malicious people. Compliant become vulnerable. You are now prey to someone who recognizes your inability to say no to things that are harmful, that are bad, that are dangerous to self psychic, to your emotional stability. A malicious person recognizes that and will use that to their advantage out of selfish intent and motives, such as, which leads into the second type of personal boundary problem we discuss, is a controller. A controller, the Bible calls, is a form of evil when it is used deceitfully to exploit, manipulate, or control someone else with selfish driven motivations and intentions. It has nothing to do with you, the person who is controlling. You are just an object to be used by the controller, the malicious person who is seeking to fulfill their own selfish desires and needs through you, because in essence, you don't know any better. You are vulnerable. You are prey. And because you are not able to say no, because in saying no, you're afraid of hurting someone's feelings, you're afraid of being abandoned, you're afraid of being alone, you succumb or stay with the controller for those reasons. That's abusive. That's an abusive type of relationship that could be verbally and emotionally as well as psychologically. It does not have to include the physical, but can absolutely escalate to physical abuse. We discussed there are two types of controllers. You have aggressive controllers. These are people who do not care about the boundaries of other people. They will run over your boundaries or pretend that they do not exist. They are aggressive. When you think of aggressive, they don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about your boundaries. And that is a result of them themselves as children. Their needs have been completely disregarded, um, not paid attention to. So therefore, they replicate that in their adulthood with other people. They disregard it, completely disregard it. They themselves, controllers, are often the abusers. They are often the abusers, verbally, emotionally, and physically, as well as psychologically. They do not take no for an answer. They will not accept no for an answer. And they neglect taking responsibility to accepting others as they are. They don't care anything about you. You can be the sweetest person, the kindest person. You're their prey. They don't care about that. It's all about Let me get what I need to fulfill my need. And the best way to do it is by controlling you. Let me control you to get what I need. Again, you're just an object. You're an object. The second type of controller is a manipulator. A manipulative type of controller are individuals who try to persuade people out of honoring their own personal boundaries. Manipulators. Manipulators are underdogs. They are less honest and they are very crafty. You see, an aggressive, they're out there. They'll tell you to your face. They're known. There's nothing to hide. A manipulator is more on the sly side. They are, again, they're crafty. Okay. They're sly. They're not as honest of their intentions. Um, they are motivated in the same by selfish intent. Selfish intent is the motivation. They're indirect, manipulative persuasions. They will manipulate circumstances to get their way. And they will use seduction or charm into getting others to carry their burdens by using guilt messages. They will make you feel guilty about your own personal boundaries that you have set to protect yourself so that they can crafty, slyly, underhandedly use you to fulfill their own selfish desires. That's manipulation. That is deceitful. And that is a form of evilness when someone seeks to use you in that manner. That is a manipulative controller. The Bible states in the book of Proverbs, chapter 31, verse 30, that charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting. It'll come and go. Charm is deceptive. Now, charm is deceptive when it is used to deceive someone else to get what you want. We use charm. Who doesn't like a charmful person, be it a female attracted by a charmful gentleman? Charm is, if you will, a tool used to wheel in people. It's a tool. But when it's used with deceptive intentions, that's a form of evil because the person whom they are deceiving will get hurt on the backside. Another personal boundary problem we discussed was a person who is a non-responsive. A non-responsive. A non-responsive personal boundary problem is an individual who appears to be insensitive to the needs of others while neglecting their own personal responsibilities that we have towards one another in relationship. So a non-responsive, there are actually two types of non-responses. Again, they appear as someone who doesn't care about your needs, who doesn't address your needs. So they appear to be insensitive, nonchalant, cold-hearted, just completely dismissive to your feelings or to your needs. Two types of non-responsives. One are those who have a critical spirit towards others' needs. The root cause to a person who has a critical spirit towards someone else's personal needs is that person's one own dislike towards their own needs. So they project that. It's a form of projection onto someone else, being critical of someone else because you yourself don't like yourself. You basically feel incomplete within yourself, unable to have your needs fulfilled. Therefore, you project the opposite, a critical spirit, towards someone else needs because your own personal needs are not met. That's a critical spirit. And in turn, they wind up ignoring the needs of someone else. A second type of non responsive is one who carries a form or exhibits rather a form of narcissism. These are people who are so absorbed, self absorbed in their own desires and needs that they completely become oblivious to someone else's needs through exclusion. So they are so self-driven with themselves that they are completely blind, um, ignorant, um, dismissive to the needs of someone else because they are so self-absorbed to getting their own needs met. That is a form of narcissism, um, and can be another way a non-responsive acts in a relationship. The Bible states, in reference to being so self absorbed with self that you completely dismiss the needs of other people, in the book of Philippians, chapter 2, and verses 3 through 4. And it states, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the other. So the Bible clearly states that we are not to be so self-absorbed with ourselves that we completely dismiss the needs of other folk, but rather in humility to value someone else's needs. Now, that does not mean that you completely self sacrifice yourself. That's not what it's saying. But it's saying to not be so dismissive to the needs of someone else that you focus just solely on you. You exclude someone is in dire need, you completely exclude them to seek after self. That goes against the word. Do not do anything out of selfish ambition or conceit or vain conceit. Now, wouldn't this, if we all operated with this perspective in relationship, wouldn't this look lovely? Wouldn't this look so cohesive if each one of us operated with this perspective in relationship? Taking the account of someone else's needs and them also taking your needs into account, and hand in hand we meet each other's needs. That would be such a beautiful, cohesive, wonderful relationship because no one is thinking just of themselves, but they're taking into the account the needs of someone else, their safety and security, and knowing that my partner values my needs just as much as theirs and is willing to meet my needs, and I in the same. This is how God designed relationships, that we reciprocate without selfishness, without just seeking to fulfill just us. Knowing that our other partner recognizes our needs, attends to them unselfishly, and mutual reciprocation with godly love that does not harm, hinder, fear, tear down, but rather reconciles and heals, is a quality God preordained type of relationship. A fourth type of personal boundary problem that I was unable to discuss last week that we will discuss today, in addition to, is an avoidant. An avoidant personal boundary problem. This is an individual who says no to good things. So you have the compliant who is unable to say no to bad things. In essence, wind up saying yes to the bad things. An avoidant is an individual who says no to good things and the inability to ask for help. They are unable to recognize that they have their own personal needs, and as a result, unable to let in other people, and avoidant. So they keep away from. It too is a form of, it's a coping strategy, a mechanism, a defensive strategy to avoid letting others come into that personal space. In essence, they deny their own needs. They deny their own needs. So they're saying no to the good. They withdraw themselves when they are in need, and they do not ask for the support of others. And that too is driven by fear. There's a fear factor that's the root underneath that. Avoidance, they use walls. So boundaries are designed to protect us. They are set up to tell us who we are and who we are not, what we are responsible for and what we are not responsible for, and how others are to treat us. So with an avoidant, they use boundaries as a wall. A wall is unable to be penetrated. A wall is basically a barrier, whereas boundaries are designed to be gates with fences. A gate with a fence. It is to allow the good in and to keep the bad out. With a wall, you are completely shunning everything, good and bad. Um, that's not what God designed boundaries to be set up, utilized, or instituted in our personal relationships. God gave us the freedom to enjoy safe, loving type of relationships with other people and with Him. God is the creator of relationships. He desires to be in relationship with us, and that's where we have the desire to be in relationship with other people. It is a God driven nature within all of us to be in loving, safe, secure relationships where our needs, both partners' needs, are met. And to avoid those relationships that are destructive. God even allows us the freedom to let Him in or to close Him off. He gave us the power and the freedom of choice. Choose left, choose right, choose life, choose death. He gave us the power of choice. Even so, He gave us the choice to even allow Him in or to close Him off. Why? God desires not to violate our boundaries, just like He desires us not to violate His boundaries. And that's why He sets standards according to His word and how we should live, act, behave. And like manner, God desires not to violate our boundaries. so he can relate to us and understands that in doing so will build trust with him. So we have also a responsibility to open up to God in need and in repentance. We have a responsibility. No one else can do it for us. We have, again, the power of choice. We have the power of choice. We are not um, absent from the decisions that we make in relation to how we are to act, behave, who we let into our lives, how we allow others to treat us. We also have a responsibility to set the standards and to set the boundaries. With avoidance, unfortunately, they struggle with opening up to God and with other people. They experience problems and their own personal legitimate needs as bad, destructive, or shameful. And that's why, again, they just avoid, they shut down, they have these walls, these impenetrable um, walls that cannot be penetrated. Avoidance. Um, so, what does a relationship look like that has these various types of personal boundary problems? So, we're going to discuss two types of relationships, two types of relationships, incorporating these various types of personal boundary problems. Okay, so we have a person who is a compliant, who is unable to say no to the bad. They are often found in abusive relationships. They're driven by fear of abandonment, fear of hurting someone else's feelings. And then an avoidant, one who just completely shuts down, who has these walls, who are avoidant. So both of them have boundaries where they shouldn't have them, meaning against the good. And they both have boundaries, no boundaries against the bad, no boundaries against the bad, and boundaries against the good. What type of relationship does this look like? It can absolutely be abusive. Verbally abusive, things are said, emotional abusive. No one has the regard to one's emotional safety and security of feeling loved, feeling accepted, belonging, but yet each desires those things because, again, it's God, it's an innate desire within us to be loved, to feel love, to give love. um, Compliance and avoidance, they are going against the good things. They are not allowing good things to come in, and fear is driving their relationship. So, in their attempts to obtain emotional support, they will, and this is just an example, one of the examples in how they will operate in trying to get emotional support. They will do a favor in hope of being loving or being seen as loving to receive love in return. Okay. It is a dysfunctional way of seeking a return investment of love and is a indirect means of controlling someone else to fulfill your personal need of feeling emotional love and support. Compliance and avoidance together, they look for someone else to repair them. Hence the mechanism of, again, seeking a return investment of love, that from which they put out. I'm looking for someone to repair me, so let me put out in hopes that I get it back. That is dysfunctional ways of trying to get emotional support, because you're indirectly, again, controlling by giving with the intentions of receiving back. Um, a second type of relationship is a controller and a non-responsive. So with the controller, again, we have the aggressive and the manipulative type of controller, and then you got the non-responsive, who completely does not respond to the needs of others, either because they are so self-absorbed with themselves, or they are critical of others' needs because of this hatred that they have within themselves of feeling incomplete. The controller, hence the term control, I'm going to control you to get what I want. So controllers and non-responses, they are unable to look past themselves. Okay, they have no regard to someone else's feelings. Um, Others, they are blamers. Others are responsible for their struggles. They're placing the blame. They are not able to take responsibility for themselves, their behaviors, their actions, how they treat one another. Again, they completely are oblivious to the needs, to the boundaries of other people. These are your blamers. These are your projectors. I'm going to project onto you that which I don't like about myself. I hate within myself. I'm incomplete within myself. So I'm going to put it on you. I'm going to be critical towards your needs because my needs are not met. Um, Controllers and non-responders, they prey on vulnerable people. They prey on vulnerable people who have blurred boundaries. Um, those are rescuers, those who are rescuers and have the natural propensity to take on others' problems without complaining are the vulnerable prey controllers and non-responsives seek. They want someone who's not going to complain. They're going to do whatever they want them to do. Um, and that's their direct way, again, of control. But the rescuer is unaware of that. They feel like they're doing due justice. They are the enablers. I'm going to enable your behavior. The controller is using you. It's a very twisted type of relationship, but yet both are dysfunctional. So they look for someone who will keep them away from being personally responsible for their controlling behavior. It looks like it is a wonderful, cohesive, hand in hand type of relationship. But if it's not a genuine reciprocation of love without the intent of selfishness, without the direct intent of controlling, manipulating, or dismissing the needs of someone else, including yourself, it is absolutely dysfunctional. That is a personal boundary problem. And we see lots of these relationships again in abusive type of relationships. We see this type of behavior where one is controlling, one is dismissive of their own needs, let alone someone else's needs. Someone who does not recognize when they're in danger because their ability to say no has been hampered or undeveloped from childhood, because to them saying no equates to being bad. Dysfunctional, and it leaves both people broken. Both are operating in a state of brokenness, but this is not the relationship in which God desires for either of his children. So the quality of the relationship we have with God absolutely directs, influences how we relate with ourselves and how we relate in relationship with other people. So Do an inventory of the relationship that you have with God. What does that look like? What are the boundaries? What type of standards are in place? Are you operating according to the standards God has placed? His standards are meant to protect us from being harmed from other people, um, and from us harming ourselves by how He sees us, how the call and the purpose that implanted within all of us. It is not to do us harm, but it's so that we may prosper, that we may be fruitful, and that we may be able to share the love of Christ with other people we are in relationship with. I pray that you have been blessed by today's discussion. I pray that you have learned something, able to apply um, anything that has been said, or will cause you to check your boundaries. Check your boundaries. How are you relating with other people? Do you find yourself being too submissive to things that are unhealthy? Are you completely avoiding things that perhaps could be beneficial to your personal growth and avoid it? Are you completely dismissing the needs of other folk because you are so self absorbed with yourself? Um, Check. It doesn't do any harm to do self check. Check yourself, before you wreck yourself, and check yourself before you seek to check somebody else, because oftentimes when we try and check someone else, it's often things about ourselves that we don't like, and we put it on to somebody else, or we're critical of someone else because of of the own hatred we have within ourselves. So I pray that you would be able to utilize this information for yourself, or share it with someone you may know who can benefit from the information, learn and grow from it. Thank you again so much for tuning in to the Roots of Life Christian Council Ministries. I pray that you will be able to tune in again on next Wednesday, which I do not know as yet what will be the topic of discussion. Will be in prayer, but we will be live again next Wednesday from 4 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. If you're unable to view, uh, this will be posted on my website, www.rootsoflifeccm.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. God bless you, and you have a blessed day and week.